Hey everybody, it's me, Lance Meister with Gray Fox Games, and I somehow managed to drag Josh back into his recording studio. He's in Albania. I'm not. But I've been bugging him to join me on one of these adventures and these little videos that we make that we post on GrayFoxGames.com's YouTube channel. Also, you can find it on our Discord channel. Also, you can find it on our blog and all these other places. So please, if you're watching this right now and you haven't hit the subscribe and the like and the whole 9 yards, we'd really appreciate you doing that. But thank you, Josh.
Yeah,
We're here
feel
to
free to.
talk. We're here to talk about games and games that we love and games that we enjoy. But the flip side of this is that these are games that normally we wouldn't enjoy. Like as you get into this hobby spot of the world, you start to gravitate towards the genres and the types of games that you know are going to appeal to you. You can usually tell that just by looking at mechanisms or even art or just the designer name, thing along those lines. And so these are games that, after we had cultured our preferences, somebody suggested that we play it, and we begrudgingly perhaps did play them, and we were very pleasantly surprised, and we've continued to play them going forward, and maybe even added them to our collections, if you will. So, I don't know, Josh, did you want to start with one of yours first, and I can start with one of mine, or
Sure. I'll start off with one of mine.
sweet?
Um, I'll preface this with a little sort of gamer preferences profile for me because, like, I love Euro games, and there was a time that I considered myself a Euro gamer. Right? I think of myself as more of an Omni gamer now because I've found a lot of stuff that breaks that mold that I love. But like, Stefan Feld is still my favorite designer.
Mm.
Um, the poster boy for just another soulless Euro. And
Ah.
I love all those soulless Euros. I love pushing cubes around and getting victory points. And so most of the games that I've got on this list of things that I shouldn't have any business liking but do are games that are outside of that mold, because that style of Euro game point salad is very much what I enjoy. So with that said, the first game that is on my list here is one that it was involved in an early BGG scandal. So this game is Soccer Tactics World. It was a 2006 production, and I remember very well it getting some pretty terrible reviews early on, and then the designers or publisher or something had like reached out to BGG and been like, take down our game. You have to police this thing because people are saying mean things about it. And there was a back and forth and threats to sue and all sorts of things. And when this controversy came to light, it got review bombed to the high heavens, such that it had a review of like a 2 or something on average on BGG once upon a time. Um, and so this game is, as you might guess from the name Soccer Tactics World, a soccer game. And it is also like, it is not a great game. It is,
Really? I thought I was gonna say
yeah.
you found this rough cut gem or something, but
Oh,
okay,
oh
go
no,
on.
I love it. Like despite its flaws, I'm not like golly. Everybody is so mistaken. I know they're right, right? It's not great. But did you ever play a game called Street Soccer? Street Soccer.
No,
So
no.
that was a BGG darling for a little while. That was very much like roll a d6 and move a guy and pass a ball, and people likened it to backgammon. Um, this game is very much like that. You roll a die, you move your guy. There's rules for passing. It's a giant grid, and it's got these interesting quirks. Quirk number one is it comes with a digital timer, so you're meant to play it in real time,
Oh,
like a
geez.
soccer game, like the clock is ticking down while you play. And the other thing is that right in the middle of the board, in spaces that can be occupied by your player pawns, is a spinner that you're meant to use to see whether or not you score. So if you happen to have somebody at midfield and you're taking a shot, you got to pick those pieces up, flick the spinner, put the pieces back. So
Why wouldn't they just put
um,
the spinner off to the side, or I don't know, whatever?
I couldn't tell you. It's a it has very little functionality and very simple mechanisms with perhaps overly complicated mechanics for passing and intercepting, and this weird real-time timer. But it does come with a very charming plastic trophy.
Oh.
And one of the things that I think maybe we will find in this list is that a lot of the games that we have no business liking, but we do like, we like because of the time or place or the people that we played them with. And so this has become a staple game for me and my brother to play when we get together. It is goofy, it's ridiculous, it's perfect to sit around and drink some beers. We get to pass the plastic trophy back and forth.
Ah,
So I have had a lot of joy with this goofy, terrible, scandalous, controversial game. So, Soccer Tactics World from 2006 is the first game on my list.
so I gotta ask, is it in your collection?
So that's a really interesting question. It was in my collection for some time, and I actually don't know if it is still in my collection because when I moved abroad, I purged, close to 500 games. And so I brought a handful with me here to Albania, and then I put a handful more in storage. These were games that I thought were likely not to come back in print, but that I have special affection to, and I didn't want to be lost. So it is very possible that this is one of the 20 games or so that are in a tote somewhere back in the US, but I don't actually know for sure.
Yeah. Do you ascribe to that? I mean, this is totally aside. Do you ascribe to that mentality of if you haven't thought about it for a year, you should probably get rid of it?
Um, Not really.
Yeah.
Like I'm much more of the sort of Marie Kondo school, right?
Yeah.
Like as I approach a more minimal-ish life, it is more about keeping the things that bring me joy, and sometimes the things that bring me joy, even if they only do so once every handful of years. Um, but
Sure.
I do subscribe to the notion that if it can be replaced in under 20 minutes for under $20, you if and you're struggling to decide whether or not you should keep it, you should just throw that away.
That's a good mentality. All right, that had nothing to do with anything. So I'll talk about my first game, and this is so again, little background. I was absolutely more of an Ameritrash gamer when I first got into the hobby. That was just the stuff I enjoyed. I mean, the game that got me into the hobby was second edition Arkham Horror from Fantasy Flight Games, which maybe has a little bit of Euro elements to it, but it is unabashedly a heavy thematic, chaotic, dice rolling, save the world or die type of game. And then I slowly sprinkled in Euros here and there that I would enjoy to some extent or to great extent. Regardless, one of the things that the game that I'm going to mention that I really, really enjoy, which is like, oh, well, that's a really great game, is Tigris and Euphrates. And the reason why I'm surprised is because I had played maybe a dozen, maybe a few less, 10, let's say 10 games designed by Reiner Knizia prior to playing Tigris and Euphrates, and I had not enjoyed any of them. I found them to be exceedingly dull and just a process game where you just and there maybe because there was no theme, maybe because I didn't like get it or something like that. But I just felt I even remember I was at Origins one year and Joel Eddy from Drive Through Review said, "Hey, I want you to play this game with me." And I sat down and played it, and about halfway through, I was like, "This is a Reiner game, isn't it?" And he's like, "Yeah, it is. I didn't want to tell you that it was." And I mean, I was so livid. I was like, "I know that's why I despise this." But so I kept being told that Tigris and Euphrates, well, you'll love Tigris and Euphrates. You'll love it. You'll love it. This, that, and the thing. And I finally played it at BGG Con, like right before the pandemic. So it would be 2019, I'm guessing. And thankfully, I had somebody there that was a very good teacher who sat me down.
You need it for that game.
Yeah, you do. But somebody that yeah, and it was a long teach. And his name was Paul. But he sat down and he kind of walked me through it. walked me through how the different color leaders work, how they interacted with the tiles, how you scored each individual, how the treasures worked. We didn't play with any like big expansions or anything. We just played with basic Tigris and Euphrates. And when he was describing it to me and how very conflict driven the game was, I realized that I was probably going to enjoy it because of the fact that it was going to have a great deal of, shoving other people down so you don't drown, for lack of a better term. And I did. I really enjoyed it. And I begrudgingly had to agree that maybe I didn't enjoy anything else that the man had designed before. But when I got to the end of that, it was a longer game. It was like 2 hours or so when we finally got done. And I remember, and I lost horribly. I did not do well.
It's because one of your scores was like 35 and one of your scores was 2, so your score was 2.
Yes, exactly. And I knew that going in, that like you needed to basically equate those. And I do feel that, obviously the man has designed, is a designer beyond compare when compared to somebody like me. But I've always felt that like he uses that in a lot of games. It almost feels like, make sure I put in my definitive Kinesia scoring thing. But it worked for that one, right? Because I could definitely see after I thought about the game. And that's how I can usually tell I really enjoyed a game, is that if I'm thinking about it after the fact. Like I'm like, oh, that's why you do that, and that kind of stuff. And so I begrudgingly had to admit that there was a Kinesia game out there that I really enjoyed. I've never played the new version of it that came out. I'm forgetting the name of it.
They've done two remakes since. They did Yellow and Yangtze, and then another one that maybe they just called Han. No, that's the remake of China, which is not an Itzy game.
Yeah.
They've done 2 new versions. I'd like to play one of the new versions where they changed it from square tiles to hexes. That seems like it gives more conflict.
Yeah, well,
so many more edges for you to pick a fight on.
Yeah. That was TNE as it's known. And I don't own it.
It's a brilliant game.
Is there a but there, or is it?
No, I love that game. It's
okay.
An absolutely brilliant game. I mean, it is, like a lot of designs of that era and a lot of designs of that designer. It feels sort of themeless and soulless, right? Like it's colored tiles and colored cubes, and at the end of the game, you're not like, golly, did I master the advent of farming? You're like, I have 4 blue cubes, right? But like, the strategy of the game is brilliant. The way the conflicts work is brilliant. The older version that I played with the wooden monuments that kind of nest together in 2 different colors, looks really nice on the table. That's a game that I love.
Yeah, no, I
wonder if anybody watching this wonders if we ever are going to talk about games that are like newer than 15 years old, because we should.
We should. But isn't that one of those things where
all of our joyful gaming experiences are like before we worked in the industry?
Yes, that's like they say, the best music you ever listened to was when you were a teenager. And then it
90s forever.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead with your next.
Okay. You gave me a good segue here because of our reference early on. Because one of these games that I love, despite having no business loving it, is Elder Sign. And I have no business loving this game because it is just Cthulhu flavored Yahtzee.
Yeah.
And so much of what I love about games is the opportunity to dive in and form a long-term strategy, right? I love these Feld games where I'm creating kind of feedback loops of my actions to, at the end of 90 minutes, reap the benefits of what I've done. I love games like TNE that take hours. I love games like like Indonesia, right? Where we talked about last time that at the end of 4 hours, I can look back and see the one decision I made that made my whole game spiral down the drain. And Elder Sign is none of this, right? On my turn, I pick up 5 dice and I roll them. And if I happen to have got a card, maybe I'll add a couple extra dice.
Mm.
um, yet yet I do love it, right? I like. You might be surprised to discover that I really do like Arkham Horror. Third edition is where I got into this, and I like the story elements in this. I think the mechanics are fine, right? But
It,
every
yeah.
game of Arkham Horror I've ever played tells a story, and I have lots of memories and lots of laughter about things that have happened in that game, seemingly non sequitur things, or like, going to pick a fight with a vampire when you have nothing but like a stick, and
It ended up
being
being
closed,
lost in time and space.
right, being closed in a portal when somebody else is trying to shut something down. Like I had all these stories, and so Elder Sign distills this, to the sort of purest form. The way that we get the most enjoyment out of it is we try and evoke as much theme as possible, like put on a little Nox Arcana on the radio while we're starting to play, and
Yeah.
we tell people, okay, when you go to a location, you have to read the flavor text. So people pick up the card and read about how they went into the bathroom stall and there was blood all over the mirror, and then two
Yeah.
monsters appear, right? So we do our best to wring a story out of that. Despite the fact that like I've also seen people play this game in 30 minutes where it's like, I got it, your go. I think that's not the right way to enjoy it. And if somebody had told me, if the first time I played this, somebody had said it's Cthulhu Yahtzee, I would have gone pass. But they didn't, and so I didn't, and as a result, I have a game that I enjoy quite a bit. The fact that it's cooperative helps as well, because this is in fact one of the few games I brought with me to Albania,
Oh.
because it's pretty easy for me to get people into a game when I can just tell them, you roll the dice and then we'll help you through it.
Got it. How many of the expansions do you
So here I don't have any.
Okay.
But back in the storage, I do have probably most of them. I think the first expansion was pretty much must-have to
Yep.
the difficulty. But I've enjoyed some of the other ones too. The other ones I like, but they take away from this pure Cthulhu Yahtzee joy, and they try and turn Elder Sign into Arkham Horror. They're like, and now there's a mission in the snow, and there's effects that carry from turn to turn, and you have to remember this. And suddenly, those games of Elder Sign take 2 hours, and that's not what I signed up for.
No, I agree. You touched on the. I remember when Elder Sign came out, I was like, oh, I got to get this. I'm so amazing. I'm so excited. And I think it was like when it came out, which whenever that was, I was at Gen Con. This is before I worked in the industry, and I remember I waited in the line to buy my copy. And when I got home, I was so excited to head out because we had played Arkham Horror so many times, and we played it, and we were like, it's okay. But we won like right out of the bat. We're like, that seemed kind of easy. And we were like, we were so used to Arkham Horror just, beating us senseless repeatedly. And
that had to have been a publisher decision. Richard Lanius would have let you never win that game.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I agree. The first expansion definitely upped the difficulty, and it got to the level of difficulty that we were looking for. I still own that one, and I much like you, I at one point had a giant collection of like 3,000 plus games, and I've got them down to about 250 now, and I still want to get rid of most of those. So, yeah,
3,000 is crazy.
Yeah, no, it was. And,
500 felt overwhelming.
Yeah, no, it was insanity. It was, and I was really happy when I got rid of most of them. Yeah, so good pick.
That's Elder Sign 2011. That game, and
really that long ago. Wow, it just doesn't feel like it's that long ago.
Yeah, and for the record, I do love Arkham Horror as well, but I've never I've never enjoyed a game of Arkham Horror so much as when played at a convention where Richard Lanius is at the table because he goes around encouraging people to make the worst decisions. And it's like hand on your shoulder, like, do you want to take a dark pact, buddy?
Do I?
I do now. All right. So
All right.
that's me, Elder Sign.
So, all right. So now my next game is going to be Gaia Project, and this is kind of like it's a little bit cheating. It's kind of like the same story behind Kinesia. So when Terra Mystica came,
That's Terra Mystica in space, right?
yeah, Terra Mystica in space. So when Terra Mystica came out, I had all these people telling me this game's amazing. You gotta play this. It's like a fantasy themed Euro, but it's a civilization Euro, and everybody talked it up like crazy to me. And it's like all these different factions and all these that have all these different powers and abilities, and you got to work with each other to do stuff. And I was like, that sounds amazing. And I don't remember what I think I was the Giants the first time I ever played. And and the whole attitude about Terra Mystica is you put your people on the board and then you interact with other people. And I remember I went first and I took a spot on the board, and then nobody else built near me. So my game was hideous because of the fact that like everybody else was doing all these cool things. Like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to give you that, and you give me that, and I'll give you that, and you give me that. And then on my turn, I was like, I'm going to move this cube from here to here. Go ahead. And I remember this game was horrible. I was like, why? It's like nobody built next to me, and it was just, and I despised it. I despised my whatever internal length game to finish dead last by negative billion points. And so then somebody's like, you got to play, but you picked a really bad faction to start with. You got to pick like the halflings, or you got to pick the elves or something. And I did it again, and like pretty much the exact same thing happened again, where everybody else seemed to just have everything cool going on while they're transmuting magic back and forth. I played the game I think 3 times total, hated it. When people suggested playing it again, I was like, nope, not going to do it. I had bought a copy, paid extra to have a copy brought back from Essen because I was so excited about the game. And then eventually offloaded it to somebody, just gave it away or sold it for like $10 or something. And then when the Gaia project came out, people were like, "Oh, it's Terra Mystica in space," and of course I was like, "Pass! I have no interest." And then again, this was a BGG Con thing where Scott Alden, I'm not trying to name drop here, but he was like, "Oh, you got to play this; it's really fun." And this is, when did it come out? I just pulled it up too, and I was gonna try to remember when it came out.
2017.
Yeah, so it was BGG Con that year, and he said, "You got to play this," and I was like, "I don't want to." No, and I would tell him my story, and he'd heard the story before, and he was like, you need to throw away your
preconceived notions."
Yeah, there you go. I was gonna say something more mean, and he said, "You got to play it," and I was like, "All right, fine." And I gotta admit, it took away some of the stuff that I really, really despised about Terra Mystica, which I've heard now that the expansions that have come out for Terra Mystica, like fixes some of that stuff that I really despised, as far as like the placement of your faction and what have you. But they took that and they streamlined everything so people's turns don't take forever anymore. And the path to victory is much more evident. And I know a lot of people like say the standard, it's you can, there's lots of ways you can win, that kind of thing. But it feels like that, and it also does feel more like you are exploring space, and you are forging a civilization, and you're all working together but also competing against one another, which is the whole plot or the idea behind it, was that I felt, which was that you had to work together to do something in Terra Mystica, but only one could stand supreme at the end. And it is very heavy. I mean, it is also way heavier, in my opinion, than Terra Mystica as far as the complexity goes.
Is this a game that you like, even though you shouldn't like it, or is this a game that you love now?
I think it's. Oh, that's a good question. Oh man, how do I answer that? I guess it's like this the theme here is like it surprised me, right? Like I was like
Yeah.
I went into it saying there's no way I'm going to enjoy this. And then even though it was 3 hours or so the first time we played because of the fact that learning it and trying to figure out how it was going. I have to say Scott is a horrible teacher of games for a guy who runs the number one website in the world.
I hope he doesn't watch this.
Oh yeah, I told him that. I was like, you are horrible at teaching games. Just so you know, he's like, I know, I'm horrible. He is the classic person that will say, "Oh, after like the first two turns, oh by the way, on his turn, oh by the way, you can actually do this and turn it into 7 victory points." I was like, "Well, that would have been nice to know." Like,
Yeah. So I asked because I also loathe Terra Mystica,
oh,
and
thank
so
goodness.
when people came along and said you should play Gaia Project, I went no. And they said, no, you really should. And I didn't fold like you. I just went, no chance. Playing this garbage. I went and looked it up on BGG. I was like, not only is this uglier than that other game by 500%, it looks like a spreadsheet on an empty board. I just, I, I ask if you love it because it's one of the things where it's like we're building a list, right? Someday you and I will be at a convention together again, and there are games that we have to play. So I'm curious if this will be on it or if I can safely avoid it forever. And I'll just tell you, I didn't have the experience that you had with Terra Mystica, where I played and nobody interacted with me, and I just sat all alone in a corner. I played 3 or 4 times, and sometimes I was more isolated, and sometimes I was more engaged, but it really just felt like a lot of work. And it also felt like I would be handed my faction. I would have to sit and think about it for 5 minutes and determine the optimal way to play that civilization. And then I was obligated to do that. So it didn't really feel like I got a lot of joy out of the decision-making process. I felt like I got handed a puzzle. I got to try and figure out the solution before we began. And then if I won was dependent on whether or not I did that. I also remember tediously just pushing around the mana in that Mancala mechanic. Felt like a job. I was like, I'm going to do this on the board, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to move these widgets around so I can pump this thing up. And I just like, I don't know. It was too much.
Yeah, I mean, so I've since played it, I think 3 times now, and it's always at BGG Con, and and I haven't played it in the last 2 years that I've been at BGG Con. But it's one where like I almost bought it. Like I was at the local game store in town, and they had a some sort of sale going on. Buy one, get one 50% off or something like that. And I said, oh, I could get this game, and I could also get Gaia Project. And I remember I was sitting there, but then I kind of came to my senses, and I said, I just don't see myself like sitting down and playing this, and it's like a convention game for me. And if it's a convention game, I don't need to buy $120 euro that's going to sit in my closet and wait for this possible moment when I'm going to take it out. I don't think it's one you're going to like, Josh. I don't think it is. The processing of like there is still that Mancala thing going on your player board of doing those things. I think you should probably just stay away. My reason it's on this list. Go ahead.
For what I would just say, part of the reason that I love the Felda games is that like I do need to form a long-term strategy, but I get to kind of implement them incrementally, and that the games push back, right? Sometimes you're just like, you can't do that anymore. You got to figure out something else. And I'm like, okay, neat. Because figuring out something else is fun for me. And I find that I don't get a lot of joy out of a game where I'm like, at the start, I go, this is the plan. And then I spend 2 hours executing it. Just like, it makes me want to program a robot to do it for me. I'm like, this is how you'd win, and just do that. I'm going to go make meaningful decisions somewhere else.
Yeah, everybody programs their robot. Whoever programs their robot the best wins. I read a science fiction novel. Like,
wait, you're getting sidetracked now.
I wasn't. Okay, fine. Anyway, very good.
I had another game I want to talk about. How long do you think people are going to listen to us do this?
Well, hopefully the whole time. But you go.
All right, so my third game, my final game, apart from honorable mentions in this category, is Pax Porfiriana.
No.
And so this is a 2012 Phil Eklund release about the Mexican Revolution, right? Well,
Yes.
or about the period of history called the Porfirian peace, right? This time under the dictator Porfirio Diaz, and everybody in this game plays as a wealthy hacendado who is looking to either suck up to the current regime to be named the successor or topple the current regime in whichever way makes the most sense to them. And and I should hate this game for a lot of reasons. I should. What did you want to jump in?
Well, no, I just I, when I pulled it up just out of curiosity to because I mean this was a game that I purchased thinking I really need to play this one day, and then after it sat on my shelf for years, I was like, and we're just gonna give this to my heavy gamer friend Cullen, who will eventually play it because and he loves it. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it is. This game is it's ugly as sin. It has some of the worst graphic design I've ever seen in my life. It takes a scholar to be able to explain it to other people. It is laid out in such a way as to make it as confusing as possible to do what you want to do. It's a vicious, in your face, direct conflict heavy game that at larger player counts can have and encourages active negotiation to tear down other people at the table. It is it is in every way anathema to things that I should enjoy, and yet the heart of this is a very brilliant engine building game where you have got to find the right combination of cards in order to execute the thing that you need to do. It is also really interestingly thematic, right? So the way that you win this game is by toppling the dictator, either by getting a bunch of support from the US so that they can annex Mexico, or by pushing for an anarchistic kind of overthrow of the government where it results in him being voted out, or by military coup where you assassinate the leader, or by just pledging your loyalty and keeping the regime to stand. And the way that players can do this and the multiple ways that you can use your cards in order to earn the sort of influence you need to do this is a really fascinating experience, unlike anything I had ever encountered in a game up until this point. Um, and I mean, it's joyful for me to play this. And one of the most joyful things about it is the game comes with 220 cards, um, but you only use a subset of them every time you play. So you never actually know what's available in the deck, so you cannot have a tried and true strategy. And so this is the way that it really speaks to me, is that I'm forced to adapt every time I play, because something that worked last time won't necessarily work this time. We don't even know that those resources are in there.
Hmm.
So it's a really fascinating experience, and I enjoy it very much. Even though I enjoy it with some reservations, about the design and frankly about the designer.
I was wondering. I
I
was
have,
wondering if you were going to say anything
oh,
about that.
well, I mean, of course, right? Like it's I don't buy Eklund games anymore. It's hard after buying a game and opening it up and finding an essay in the rulebook entitled "In Defense of British Colonialism" to feel good about spending my
Mm.
money that way. So like, it doesn't change the fact that I think this design is really quite clever, and worth playing if it tickles your fancy mechanically or thematically. Uh, I do think it is. Yeah, it's but nearly one of a kind. Um,
Yeah,
and
I mean, it
for
is
that
a
reason, I
brilliant.
love it.
I played it once, had almost no idea what I was doing the entire time. I had a pretty good teacher, my friend Cullen. How many players have you played with? I played with four. I mean, which I thought was good. Um,
Yeah, I play it anywhere from 2 to 4.
okay.
Four, a lot of people regard as being the best experience. I don't love it at that player count. just because it strays into this sort of negative timing territory where it becomes very much a game about ganging up to stop somebody from winning. Um, and the negotiation that is required and encouraged to do that, I think, extends the playtime beyond the point where it is really joyful for me. I think I love it with 3. I like it very much with 2 as well, but I would play it with 4.
Yeah, and only played it the one time. Had no idea what I was doing, but I could definitely tell that's it was created with brilliantly. There's also just we just won't even go into that. So just as you say, here's my essay in defense of this horrible thing.
Yeah. I am, I am. It's a weird thing, right? And this is a game that I have kept in my collection because it goes out of print, and I don't know that I would ever be able to replace it. And I also have qualms about spending my money that way. But I'm not shy about the perspective on this. I also think that separating art from an artist is complicated. But it doesn't change the fact that I think this is a brilliant piece of game design. It exists in a context that people make up their own minds about.
Yes, perfectly said, as I would expect. So, all right. So on a lighter note, this one actually,
please.
On a much lighter note, my final game, and this actually segued really well to your first game when you were talking about Soccer Tactics, which is it isn't so much about the game; it's about the people that you play it with. So I don't own a lot of Soulless Euros. At one point, I had a fair number, but I've given away or sold most of them at this point. But I still have a few, and one of them is the Stefan Feld. Yeah, Stefan Feld. Who, mind you, if you've ever met him, is a very charming individual, and he's also like 8 feet tall. I don't know if he is, and he's like this one of the skinniest people I've ever seen in my life. And he's at least 6'5", 6'6". He looks like if a Bigfoot that is shaved himself down just to appear at a convention, so then he can go
tall, skinny, and a game designer, you say.
So here we go. So Carpe Diem, 2018. I'm not going to go deep into the mechanisms of this. It won awards, rightfully so. It is about ostensibly you are a wealthy noble in Rome, and you're basically trying to build your own little city district and match these tiles together to create the most perfect looks of things. And like any good Stefan Feld game, there are lots of ways that you can score points, because you have a garden, or you have you just whatever different colored tiles matching together, and they look perfect, and the whole goal is that you basically there's this weird kind of sort of evil pentagram in the middle that where you bebop back
it's
and forth.
It's a circle now.
Yeah.
They upgraded it.
Oh, it's okay, fair. You kind of follow these paths back and forth, and it's tough to. Just imagine a pentagram, if you will. It isn't a pentagram, but imagine that, if you will. And so you're at a spot, and there's basically 2 places that you can go. And when you go to those places, you have to pick a tile that's in that location, and then you get to add that to your board, and then you build out your player board as you go. And I was at, again, this was in 2017 or 2018 when it was released. And it was, in the evening, I was hanging out at BGG-Con, and somebody who I consider a good friend, and again, this sounds like name dropping, but Richard Ham, Rado, was there with his wife, and I think it was my friend Paul too, and they're like, hey, we need another person for this game. I've heard you want to play it with 4. And I was like, why? I was like, I would much rather just not play a Euro. And he's like, oh, no. And it's like, come on. And we barely ever play games. And it's true. Richard and I have not played a lot of games together. And I was like, all right, fine.
That
So I sat
sounds like
down.
you don't share very similar tastes, quite frankly.
No, no, we don't. And
You were like, in this Nietzsche game, I get to destroy other people. I'm in.
yeah. So, so I sat down to play this, and as far as the game goes, it is very very Stefan Feld. What's the word that people use? Elegant, like when they say like your decisions make sense, right? And there's no like, why would I? This doesn't make any sense. There's nothing like that. It feels the flow of the game is perfect, and I knew that was going to likely. I mean, because I do like Stefan Feld games. I like Macau, like, and now it was reprinted as something else. But I mean, I really enjoyed Macau back in the day. It doesn't matter, but there's several games of his that I enjoyed. Well, I mean, what's the one? Why can't I remember the one where? Never mind. Doesn't matter. I'll think of it and then I'll come back. But it's like basically it's a very brutal game. It's a very brutal game that he designed. And
The Year of the Dragon.
yes, Year of the Dragon. Oh, such a brilliant game. But anyway, the reason why I own a copy of Carpe Diem and why I've continued to play it occasionally is because I got to see a side of Richard that I don't know, and I think he was doing it a little bit to just make me happy, but he played that game so viciously. He was hate drafting tiles that he knew that I wanted just to take, and he's like, this won't even give me any points, but I know it'll give you and it'll make you happy. He was swearing when people took like his tiles. He was like leaping up. He was flipping a chair over when he was angry, and it was just, and I was in stitches the entire time that we played. And he even said after the game, he's like, I don't normally act like that. I was like, I know, but it was a game that had just enough friction where I could enjoy it, like as far as people like taking stuff that you really wanted that really would have helped out, but also I had somebody there that was amplifying it after, like, he said, well, you did me a favor by playing it, so I felt like I had to make it fun for a little. And
it's short.
Yeah, and it's short too. And he reacted to it like when you make a bad roll in Arkham Horror and everybody, like, it's like, you just need 1, 4, 5, or 6. Why can't you roll? I've spent seven clue tokens. He reacted like that. Like just like, why would you take that tile? I needed it perfectly, you bastard. He was just like screaming at me, and so whenever I see it, I mean, I've only played it a handful of times since then, but whenever I see it in my collection, I'm like, oh, Richard, and it makes me happy when I see it.
I love that game.
I assumed you would. It is well liked, and it is and for good reasons, right? I mean, like, I think it's one of his better designs. I mean, a lot of people will think it's kind of middle of the road for him, but and for him, a middle of the road for him means brilliant, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's a great design. Even as somebody who loves nearly everything that Feld has done, with the exception of In the Year of the Dragon. But yeah, I mean, I think that Carpe Diem is great. I think it is elegant. I think it's intuitive. I think it's a lot of fun. I think the fact that it plays fast is really refreshing. Because most of his games, I think, they put on the box 60 to 120 minutes or something, but they mean 30 minutes per player. And with Euro people who like to overanalyze, it can go longer than that. So, like, I've had games of Castles of Burgundy go well beyond 2 hours. So I'm like, come on, guys, it's not life or death. But Carpe Diem plays fast, and it is vicious, and not just the stealing of the tiles, but that, like, claiming the scoring cards on the separate board and trying to beat people to the thing they need, or blocking them out because you're claiming multiples. You're like, I can force you to never have this thing that would make you a lot of points.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It has a good bit of interaction.
It also
met the first printing of it was like notoriously bad, in the way that, like, I mean, the Aaliyah, when they publish these games, have a reputation for doing everything in shades of beige.
Yes.
Just Carpe Diem was shades of green, and they were like, take out the level 2 tiles from the level 1 tiles. How can you tell the difference? Get a giant bright light, shine them on them, and put them together, and then with a magnifying glass, you should be able to detect the just palening of the green color. And yeah, that evil pentagram thing. I can't tell you how many times I taught that game, and people were like, "I just can't wrap my head around this." And I was like, "Well, you have two options." And they were like, "Well, why didn't they just let me go left and right?" And like, they should have, and they did when they reprinted it. They were like, "You know what? It's just a circle."
I like the evil pentagram, and I'm glad I own the evil pentagram version. So
I mean, I also own the evil pentagram version. So, so this is a plug for both of us for that game. You can pick it up on Amazon right now, $15.
really, well, if I
Apparently.
didn't own it, I probably would. And then get it, and then I can't believe you don't like In the Year of the Dragon though. Maybe just because it's just the game just pounds on you and pounds on you and pounds on you and doesn't let up.
Well, so I mean that's true, right? Like I love games where I get to build something, and so like we'll sidetrack a little bit, but I love games where at the end the thing that I made is picture worthy, right? I like filling up my board in Carpe Diem. I like filling up my Burgundy and Castles of Burgundy. I like playing Cascadia and having my landscape with all the animals on it. And in the Year of the Dragon is like at the beginning of the game, it tells you which ways it's going to blow up what you've built, and your goal is to get your stuff blown up at the most advantageous time. So the game is like, build something so I can tear it down. Like, the game comes in and kicks over my blocks. It takes my Legos and smashes them everywhere, and I'm like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I tend to enjoy. I don't know. I just enjoy brutal games, and I enjoy like when and I like. I don't know. I enjoy the aspect uh like what was going on? I mean, I like that just that not real sadness, but like sadness. Like, oh my gosh,
I'll
I know.
happily,
Of course
I'll
it
happily
is.
play a game where you can kick down my tower. I don't like it when the game kicks down my tower. Like, did
Yeah.
you want to build something here? Well, you can't.
All
All right.
right. Well, this is where I ask if you've watched the video, is again, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We appreciate you taking the time to watch it, of course. If there's a game that surprised you, like the comments really help a lot as far as like having us interact with you and like realizing who's watching and what your opinions are, but also it tells other people that you're watching the video, and it tells YouTube that you're watching as well. So,
And tell us what you want us to talk about, because
yes,
it's
exactly.
a lot of work for Lance to get me on here. So you might as well have me saying something interesting.
There you go. All right, Josh. Well, you have a excellent weekend.
You too. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.